Painkiller Ghosts, Chapter 35, Slap in the Face. This is the next morning, now, and this is how it is. Time wakes up and goes back to sleep without getting up or looking around. And he drifts off to sleep for a few minutes, and then he wakes up again, blinks his eyes, looks towards the window to see how light it is outside, rubs his eyes, and then coughs. He sits up and lifts his knees up, and then rests his head on his knees, closes his eyes for a minute. Then he's ready to stand up. He puts his left hand down the floor next to the sleeping bag, and then lowers his right hand and he finds the rolling pin. What? He lifts it up and looks at it. He isn't so sure he didn't put it there himself, sleepwalking or something. He doesn't realize that there's a blood on it. Real blood. Stan's nose blood. Time stares at it for a minute, then two, and then he gets up and walks over to the window and stares out the window for a minute, then two. Looking around, he turns and walks out of the room, down the hall, then down the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs, he checks the front door and he finds the handle is locked. He walks past the living room, and Chastity is still asleep on the couch. Time is holding the bloodied rolling pin in his hand. After a minute, maybe two, Chastity wakes up, startled by the bearded Time hovering nearby with a rolling pin. What's that? A rolling pin. What's on it? I don't know. Looks like blood. Is it yours? The blood? Time scratched his beard and looked down the rolling pin. I don't think so. Why do you have it? What time is it? I don't know, and I don't know. She looks over the television. Hand me the remote. I'll put on the news channel so we can see the time. She puts her hand behind the cushions. Time looks around the room. He bends down, looks under the sofa. I don't see the remote control anywhere, he says. She finds a lighter under a cushion and looks over to the ashtray, thinking about relighting the joint she never finished the night before. It's not there. She looks onto the floor. Time, did you start smoking pot again? No, he says. Why? No reason. So why do you have that rolling pin again? That's what I'm trying to figure out. It was on my sleeping bag next to me when I woke up a little while ago. Chastity has gotten up off the sofa now. She's on her hands and knees going around the room looking for either the remote control or her joint, or both, whichever she can find. Time stares at the blue screen. Chastity walks over to the television and manually changes the channel, not to a cable news channel, but to one of the local channels that is talking about the morning weather and the rush hour commute. Chastity looks over at Time and says it's 7:30. Time nods his head and says nothing for a minute, then two, and he finally says, I think someone was in here last night. A few minutes later, as Time comes back into the room munching on some leftover bacon for breakfast, and Chastity is rolling herself a new joint for the morning, the local news comes back from the morning commercial break. The newscaster starts the news segment with the following. The station has just been given detail on the body found in the foreclosed home on Maplewood Avenue earlier this week. A police report states the body of Erin Patterson, a 35-year-old female, was found inside the house. The report gave no cause of death, but states that Patterson did not live in the house and that no one else was found in the house. Police say a realtor called in the evening after having dropped by the house to take pictures. Patterson was employed as a manager at a local grocery store. As, and if, more details in the story emerge, we'll have full coverage. Next up, click. Chastity turns off the television. She sits on the sofa, wordless. Time sits on the floor with his back to the wall and stares ahead at nothing. They are both silent for a while. I'm going to have to tell Link that I quit. Quit what? You don't have a job. Yeah, good point. Don't worry about it. Go. Go help Link. I'll keep the baseball bat close by. Slap. It's the end of the day. Time is still in the back of the truck. Link is driving, but not because his foot still hurt. He's driving because time drove through one stop sign and then one red light, both times almost getting Link hit off the back of the truck by the oncoming traffic. I'm driving. What are you, stoned? What? What's wrong with you, man? Nothing. We'll talk about it later. Still, I'm driving. You get in the back. Slap. The truck stops. Time hops off the back and walks to the passenger's door and opens it, climbs in and slams it shut behind him. God, I'm tired. Yeah, driving this thing is a whole lot nicer than hauling those cans. Link has an unlit cigarette behind his ear. It's been there all day. Time's thinking about grabbing it and smoking it. Someone was in the house last night. Last night, Link looks over towards Time. Who? It's got to be him. Did you see him? No, I was knocked out. Chastity? No. Stoned out, sleeping. You think it was him, though? Got to be. He left a rolling pin next to me. Yeah? With blood on it. Yeah, no fooling? No fooling, my friend. No fooling. Link drives on silently. Well, I'm gonna come and stay there for a while, I guess. You don't need to do that. Do you need a slap in the face, Time? Of course I do. He stops at a light and fingers the unlit cigarette behind his ear. You two are my friends. Thanks, Link. Slap. That night, Link and Time park the truck behind a convenience store, go inside and buy 2 coffees, and give the manager a $20 bill and ask him not to tow the truck and he can keep the change. And then they walk about 7 blocks back to Chastity's house. It's later that night, and this is how it is. Time has 2 pills in his hand. He's about to swallow them down, waterless, and Link walks by and wraps his tattooed hand around Time's forearm. What is that, man? Nothing, Link. No, what is that? Just a couple pills to help me sleep. They help. Some. Link just looks at Time, shakes his head back and forth. Yeah, it helps you so much you don't notice someone putting a bloody rolling pin next to you. Sleep better. On the floor. Feels like feathers. Chastity enters the kitchen and starts looking around. She opens up all of the cabinets but takes nothing out of any of them, leaving them all open. She lifts herself up on the countertop and sits there, facing out. Link looks over and says, "Hey, I'm staying here tonight." "Good. You're cooking." "Fine. We're having spaghetti. You got any meat?" "Nope." "Mushrooms?" "Nope. Neither kind," she smiles. "Spaghetti sauce? Tomato paste?" "Good enough. I can make that work. You do have some spaghetti in here, right?" Chastity smiles at him, stares, then, after a minute, says, "Hopefully." Time puts the sleeping pills back into his pocket. He wasn't planning on eating. He wanted to go to bed, but he started to get a little bit hungry. He sits on the sofa. It feels good to sit down. He turns on the television. It's already tuned to the news. Wars, foreclosures, the war on drugs in Latin America, the war on drugs in Mexico, the war on drugs in Chastity's kitchen, where the pasta is boiling and the drugs are, apparently, winning. Link drops some spaghetti into the boiling water. Chastity finds oregano, garlic salt, thyme. Time starts to zone out, so Chastity decides to start to zone out as she lights up a joint. And Link hits it, and he just zones out and says, 20 minutes, y'all. And no one responds, but everyone hears him. And then it's quiet for 20 minutes. 22 minutes then, and then Link says, "Dinner's ready." Time eats on the sofa in front of the television, watching the news. He falls asleep during a segment on personal bankruptcy. The sleeping pills are still in his pocket. He's just exhausted. Chastity stays up and smokes another joint with Link, who's sitting on the second stair leading upstairs directly in front of the front door. He's got a golf club between his knees, his father's unlit cigarette behind his right ear, and he's staring at the front door. Chastity smokes half of the joint with Link and then leaves him at his guard dog mode, and she drags herself back to the sofa, still smoking the second half of her joint. She hits it again, watching the news and not paying attention, and it falls and it burns ankles. Her ankles are sockless above his dirty sneakers, and that wakes him up. Time sleeping on the sofa. And he wakes him up for a second to look around the room, and he cusses a little. Then he smiles and falls back asleep, a small blister forming on his ankle. Chastity continues to smoke and watches the show. Listeners are calling in and talking to the show's host about their 401k, government bonds, and other things that Chastity doesn't have and doesn't care about. And she snubs out her joint and tries to keep her eyes open, but she can't. She falls asleep, leaning down onto Time, using his legs as a cover. Time dreams that he's driving a red car, which becomes blue after a turn he takes too fast. And he's being pulled away and pulled over by a policeman on a motorcycle. And Time pulls the car over, and the policeman walks up and takes off his helmet. And it turns out that policeman is Mama. And Time tries to talk to Mama. It is her, right there outside the window of Chastity's car that Time is now driving, was speeding in even. But Mama, the policewoman Mama, ignores him. When she talks, she has the voice of a man, and she pulls out a pad and starts to write him a ticket, and she tells him in that man's voice to slow down and take it easy. And she never smiles at him. She writes him a ticket, and she puts her helmet back on and walks back to the motorcycle and gets on and pulls off. Time looks down at his ticket that Mama gave him. The fine is 3 pennies. And all that Mama wrote in the ticket while lecturing him in a man's voice was times passing over and over and over. And he's in the car looking at the ticket, wondering if Mama will come back to give him another ticket. And outside the car he hears a slap, slap, even in his dreams, slap. And on the stairs, Lincoln is snoring. Down the block, a car door closes. Slap.